Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the spring edition of the Arne, Wisconsin Legislative Breakfast. We appreciate all of you attending. I'm Craig Tim. I work for Dom. It's my pleasure to help lead us through this morning. I thought before we get started, now that you're all kind of compact in there, why don't we start, if you can rise, try to, or let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
We interviewed you.
I'll clear my throat and see how I can do it.
So again, I want to welcome you. Also like to thank Wisconsin Rapids Community Media and Jesse Austin. Thank you for being here this morning. That will be broadcast throughout at least the greater Wisconsin Rapids area. Thank our sponsors, Urco Worldwide. I know Urco's here. Thank you. Thank you. Enbridge. Thank you very much. Ocean Spray. Thank you very much. Of course, I looked right over the top of you. And Domtar. All right, thank you to our sponsors. I'd like to introduce Krista Kuhn from the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. We're looking forward to a great morning. And then on Monday, we also will be having our transportation discussion out at Midstate from 10 to noon. So if you'd like to attend and you haven't received the invite for it, please let us know. We are working with the Department of Transportation Secretary and the Ag to be coming in end of April or early May. They had to switch the date, so we're just waiting for confirmation on that. So trying to work on some issues for our counties that we work with. So we will be working on that. Angel and I will be. I'm looking forward to that. We want to thank our sponsors, and we really appreciate Kaiser. He does a great job moderating for us, and appreciate you all being here. So we'll get started.
Thank you. I see Representative Vandermeer is here. Krista, should we just start with our...
Patrick's on his way.
Patrick's on his way, so... Well, we're going to make this nice and just open everybody, but we are going to try to hold questions till the end, just to make it fair for everybody and just easier this morning. Also, knowing the folks that are going to be speaking, they are certainly, I'm sure, open if they have the time to talk to you individually. After that, if you have a concern on anything or just a question. Again, don't forget to vote coming up in April. It's coming very quickly. I'd like to introduce, we'll start with, Nancy, we'll give you a chance to kind of get settled. Thanks for making it. You can tell us how probably difficult it is to get here this morning, but I'd like to introduce Representative Scott Krug. Scott, we told them just some brief comments on kind of what's going on in Madison, and then we'll hold questions till the end. We're going to try to have folks speak here if we can, just because of the light for the cameras.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Scott.
Morning. Come take the official position, but everybody knows I like moving around, so you got to keep up with me, Jesse. Good morning. Thank you all for being out here today. I really appreciate it. It's a crazy time right now, trying to figure out how to get around all the water issues that we're having everywhere. Right now, in Adams County, I don't know if I could actually find a path to Madison right now. That's how bad it is down south of Rome. You're talking almost every county highway is closed at this point. Highway 21's closed from Highway 13 all the way to I-39. We've got some town chairs down there who asked me to call the governor's office yesterday because some of their towns are almost entirely underwater at this point. So it's getting bad down there. So keep those people in your thoughts and prayers as we move through the next week or so here as the waters figure out where they're going to end up. It's a real big challenge right now. So we're going to try to deal with it afterwards as well. And I'm sure there'll be additional road issues we'll have to deal with, and put that on top of the current existing transportation issues we're dealing with, and it's going to be really interesting moving forward. So right now we are in the midst of the state budget process. The governor released his budget late last month. The legislature has taken the last couple weeks to kind of go through it and figure out what works, what doesn't work, where we're going to go with it, and how we're going to deal with it. Just some background on the budget. Our last state budget was $76 billion for the 2 years. This proposed budget is $84 billion for the next 2 years. Notice how I emphasize the B, because those B's get big. That's billions and billions and billions of dollars that we have to figure out how to allocate between, our top priorities, obviously education, transportation, higher education, corrections, all those types of things are all fighting for the same pot of money. One of the things we're dealing with right now is how to, see if we can afford the budget proposal. It's 8% growth in overall spending, but we've got a 3% growth in our income and revenues in the state, which is great. 3% increase in revenues is always a good thing. It's higher than we've ever seen, and it's moving along pretty quick. But those two numbers don't match up, right? So that's where you're going to see the budget discussions going the next 3 or 4 months is how do we afford whatever we're talking about, whatever proposals come forward, which ones make it through the end. So right now, the process and how it'll work is the budget will start going into the joint finance process, where joint finance will have the agencies come testify and why they think their priorities are important. Joint finance will then take a road tour, or a road show they call it, where they'll go to 6 or 7 different stops across the state and let the public testify on the budget. And then after that, the joint finance committee will start voting on different portions of the budget. So the question that's out there right now is, are we going with the governor's proposal and going with that bill and working through that process? Because as he puts this proposal on paper, it becomes an actual legislative bill. It's about 1,200 pages right now. It's fun to read. If anybody wants a copy, let me know. We'll try to get you set up with one. But it takes a while to get through it. So if you really want to dig into it and get really into the numbers and the proposals, if you go onto DOA's website, there's something called the Budget in Brief, which is more manageable. It's about 120 pages, and it kind of breaks down the category of what he's proposing in each of the areas. Budget in Brief is kind of our legislative Bible for the next 6 weeks, because not a lot of legislators are going to be carrying around the state budget with them, but we'll have the Budget in Brief all marked up and tagged with color coding, tabs, and all that kind of stuff. And then as joint finance is going through this budget process, I think there's going to be a process where the legislature creates their budget, tries to vote on a lot of issues that'll come forward moving ahead. So when I say that the legislature will do its own budget, I want you to understand that probably 60 to 65% of what's in the governor's budget is probably stuff that we agree on. It's stuff that we've already put into place. It's things we just have to find dollar amounts for. So it's going to be a lot of those things in common that'll be in both sets of budget documents, whichever way it's going to go. The legislature will probably end up more with a base type document where we just go off the numbers that we had last year and allocate new numbers this year. I think that really bodes well into the process that we're trying to deal with. We're going into this state budget process in a better financial situation than we've gone into it in decades. We've got about $2 billion in available revenues going into this budget process. We've got $600 million from the last budget that's still out there, and about $1.8 billion in new revenues that we anticipate coming into this budget process. So with that $2 billion in excess funds that we didn't anticipate, one of my goals is I don't want to raise taxes in the state budget. We've got $2 billion in additional revenues available. I think we can manage how to make this budget work with those additional dollars. Second thing we've got going on right now is historically low unemployment, 3% for 12 months in a row, 3% or less for 12 months in a row in the state of Wisconsin. It's magnificent, but it's a challenge on one side because we're having a hard time finding new people to come into the workforce. But when I say that 3% historic unemployment, I want to make sure that we're not increasing our welfare programs in the state budget as well. Those are my two goals, to make sure we're not raising taxes and that we're not increasing welfare programs, because with an economy so good, there's no reason to disincentivize people to come into our workforce. There's no reason to make people pay more out of pocket when the economy's roaring forward. So I think those are the two biggest things I'm working on. And last thing I'll leave you with, my third goal is something that I think is really important for central Wisconsin and Wisconsin Rapids area in particular. I am not in any position to tell my manufacturers that we're going to raise your taxes. We have manufacturers coming to the city of Wisconsin Rapids or the area around the Wisconsin Rapids. For the first time in decades, they're coming to make major investments. In Beer, we've got ND coming to spend $200 million in renovations. We've got Metalco coming to the East Side Industrial Park with an $80 million investment. It's not time right now to disincentivize manufacturers to open up operations in the state of Wisconsin. The reason I mention that is because one of the proposals in the governor's budget is to raise the manufacturing and agricultural tax credit. That's something I think is an absolute non-starter for me because of what I just mentioned, and for the fact that if you grew up in Wisconsin Rapids and you know our story, I've been here forever, you know that through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, we've lost almost 9,000 manufacturing jobs. Process that number. That is big. That is almost as big as those B's when I talk about billions in spending before. We're not going to lose those manufacturing jobs anymore. I don't want to lose opportunities for manufacturers to feel comfortable coming to our area. So as we move forward in our process, we're going to make sure that we protect that credit to give them the opportunity to come to the area, to expand, to grow, and to offer people good family supporting maintenance. Those are my three things in the state budget. As we go forward, we've got plenty of bills that we work on as well, but I want to make sure I give the other legislators plenty of time and recognize you folks have a lot of things on your plates too. So we'll take some questions at the end. Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott. And Scott, I didn't promote you this year. You notice that? I've introduced him twice as a U.S. congressman.
Yeah,
don't know if
I'm going to
that's-
shut the door on that one for you.
I don't know if that's your long-term goal or not, but thank you. My pleasure to introduce Representative Nancy Vandermeer. If you're talking interesting districts, she has one. Basically start at the city of Nakusa, go kind of south, go a little bit east, go a little bit west, go all the way around, and we appreciate, I'm sure your travels getting here might have been challenged too, so let's welcome Nancy Vandermeer.
Thank you. Well, good morning, and I appreciate all of you taking your time to get here on kind of maybe a challenging day for a lot of you with the roads and so on. But we're good Wisconsinites, so that's just part of what we're expected to handle. I want to acknowledge Representative Krug's remarks on the budget. I had prepared a couple of items, and he really covered it very well. You will. And there's a couple of things, he mentioned the increases in spending, contrasting it with other budgets, of course. But then also, I want to highlight also the challenge we may face in creating a structural deficit. If we were to accept this budget in whole, as it was presented by the governor, we may face a $1.7 billion deficit, structural deficit. And as all of you know, that means we may be spending it in this budget, but then we may come to reckon with it to pay for it in the next budget. And that's something that we've been working on for a number of years to reduce that structural deficit. So please bear that in mind. That will be something that will certainly weigh heavily on my decisions as we look at the budget process as we move forward. And just to contrast for you, like Scott had said, the last budget was $76 billion. My first budget in 2015, when I was elected, was $70 billion. And as you recall, you may remember, I did not support that budget because I felt that there were two issues at hand regarding that, and that was education and transportation spending. And that was not to the levels that I expected. We needed to support those two issue items for our state. So we'll carefully look at that. The next budget, the $76 billion budget that Scott referred to in 2017, I did support. So once again, here we are looking at an $84 billion budget and how we will account for that going forward and how that will affect taxation, et cetera, for those Wisconsinites who invest in our state. Of course, as I've said in the past, there are items that I feel that we should focus on in the budget, and that is continuing, as I said, to support our K-12, expanding our senior care. That's a very vital program for our seniors here in Wisconsin, addressing the debt level in our transportation, and then continuing to invest in our infrastructure and attracting employees to grow our economy. And I knew that perhaps Patrick and Scott would be doing a great job on addressing some of the budget issues today. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things that address the #1 policy issue for many of our employers. And I think all of you can probably guess what that is. Workforce. because we can have wonderful investments in our businesses, but if we don't have the right people to turn those gears, we're not going to get our jobs done. So I wanted to just very briefly talk about some of the things that I've been involved in that I have been supporting. And I also, when I talk about job creators and all of those wonderful people here in our district, I want to thank all those who came to Madison recently for Central Wisconsin Days. So we were able to get together with those who attended and have a nice, robust conversation. And I really appreciate any time that any of you take your time away to come down and see us. It's really, really very much appreciated. And I encourage you to do so. And I apologize, I was kind of under the weather this week, so it might be a little hard to hear me. So thanks for bearing with me. I'm going to digress back to that workforce issue, though. Through my committee assignments, one of my committees that I chair is rural development. You've heard me talk about that in the past. And there's 4 issue areas that we deal with, and as they relate to our rural areas, and it's K-12 in our rural areas, workforce development, technology like broadband expansion, and then of course healthcare. And last session, along with Patrick had authored a couple of these bills. I think we were on both of them. And when we talk about workforce, we had a reoccurring grant program that allowed for training and retention of our allied health and advanced practice clinicians in our rural settings. That was very significant. Also, telecommuter forward certification. What I had even heard from our professional partners at Fort McCoy is those members of the military, when they transition into our area, they oftentimes, their spouses are professionals as well and would like to continue on with their jobs. But in that case, they need that technology, that connectivity. We all talk about broadband, but they need to be able to continue their work as telecommuters. I know Linda's husband was one of our leaders at Fort McCoy. She still worked for the Pentagon while living in the Sparta area. So we need to make sure that we have that certification available so that we can continue to have that workforce be active. So that's couple of the examples for workforce that we've worked on. Yesterday, Patrick and I, we gave testimony in the committee that Patrick chairs. He's the Senate chair of the Health Committee. And back in 2015, I was the author of the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. And recently, I will tell you this story. It kind of digressed a little bit, but when I say that word, Interstate Medical Licensure Compact, it sounds kind of detailed, maybe not too exciting. And Patrick and I were recently visiting a 3rd and 4th grade class in the district. And we were taking questions, we took questions, and one of the students asked me, what was the best thing that you did? And I wanted to tell them about the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. You get it. So in that minute, how was I going to tell my 3rd and 4th grade friends about something that I thought was so good to help them? And I said, this is what the best thing I've done so far is I've helped to bring more doctors to help people like you to get better and your families. And I said, why is this important? Because this is the kind of work that we can do, that we can agree on, all as friends and neighbors, bipartisanly, and it helps everyone, no matter what their age or where they live in the state. It can help our underserved areas, especially our rural areas. It helps through telemedicine, because now we can deliver those services in more remote areas through telemedicine. And the reason why, I'll explain it a little more to you, is the reason why this is important is because we've created a clearinghouse for licensing. We're trying to create that reduction in burdensome regulation so that when physicians transfer into our state or need to practice remotely regarding telemedicine, they can do so efficiently without waiting for a license transfer from another state that can take months. we can reduce it to weeks by having that efficiency of that information into an agreed upon clearing house. And how does this happen? You may think, well, it sounds pretty simple. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this today, because these are some of the things that we work on and the way that we make it happen. And what we needed to do back in 2015, we had never, as a state, entered into a physician licensure compact before. So I authored the bill, and we were one of 12 states nationwide to enter into the agreement. The compact had not been developed yet, but we wanted to be one of the first states to be at the table, to have our 2 representatives from our state, our medical examining board, be involved in that compact and design the way that it works. We needed 17 states to partner with us to enact that compact. So it was a lot more than what was going on in the Capitol. We were needing to get on board with a lot of partners nationwide to get this to happen. Well, because it was new, there was some resistance even within our own legislators to enact this permanently. So a sunset clause was put in. And if we wanted to take a look at it several years later to see how effective it was. And I'm someone who really believes, because of my background in business, that we should always take a look. We've enacted something, how is it really working? Is it worth continuing doing? How can we improve it if we continue to move on? And that was the purpose of our hearing yesterday, was to remove our sunset clause on this compact. And this is how it changed healthcare. We have 4 major healthcare organizations that are supporting the removal of the sunset clause because it has been so successful. In April of 2017, Wisconsin was the first state through our Department of Professional Services to process the very first transitional license for our physicians. And the impact, we've had 400 physician license transfers into the state. Some are done remotely to aid us with telemedicine. And some have been new physicians coming into our state. So it's really been a very rewarding process in order to be involved in this. Also, I want to mention, we don't always testify on behalf of other bills unless they're our own. But I had an opportunity a week ago to do the same, to in fact do that. And we have an expansion of our Youth Apprentice School to Work program. And as an employer, I was involved in that a number of years ago. In fact, it was one of the first programs like that in Toma, in the Toma School District. And we felt it was very successful for our business. Not only did it teach automotive, hands-on, those hard skills, those technical skills, but it also showed our students who came from the high school how they fit into an organization. And I think that's something that you cannot always just learn in the classroom setting. This was just valuable. And so I gave my testimony based on that. And the reason why I wanted to mention it to you today is that we're looking to increase our funding for the apprentice programs in Wisconsin, update our curriculum and our career clusters, and codify the process for hours to be transferred for the registered apprentice program. And as business people, business leaders, educators, I think it's very important that you encourage businesses, people in your community who could offer or be a part of that program to do so. And if you are interested, I encourage you to reach out to any of us, and we can get you more information on that, the apprentice program. In fact, here in the 70th district, we have 68 employers who participate in the apprentice program. Many times employers find that this is also a way to attract additional hires later on. It's a wonderful recruitment tool. So, as I said, my number one policy issue that we are hearing from employers is workforce development. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of the ways that we are working on that and developing that down in the Capitol. So thank you for your patience this morning. Safe travels, and we'll look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. we're going to go to another part of the Capitol this morning and introduce our senator for this region, Patrick Testin, who also had a challenge getting here from his area too. So, good morning, Patrick.
Good morning. Well, I don't have a whole lot to say after Representative Vandermeer and Representative Krug eloquently kind of discussed.
That's the way the assembly works. We get all the stuff done.
Throwing shade early. No, it's great to be here. And so, as it's been mentioned, this session I get the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee in the State Senate. So I've been up to my neck getting briefed on healthcare policy, meeting with various stakeholders throughout our integrated healthcare system in the state. Now, both Nancy and Scott kind of touched on where things are at with the budget, and I just want to kind of give my perspective. So we are very fortunate right now in the state of Wisconsin to be in the position that we are in economically. The fact that we are likely going to end this fiscal year with a $691 million surplus and expected to take in an additional $1.7 billion in new revenue over the course of this biennium. So when you take a look at just where we are right now, I don't think there's been a time where economically we've been in a stronger position where unemployment's been below 3% for over 12 months. And our biggest challenge that we face right now is just that we don't have enough workers to fill the jobs that are available. So over the course of about the last 14 months, we've had anywhere between 80,000 to 100,000 jobs available right here in the state of Wisconsin on the Job Center of Wisconsin website. And on that very same website, we've got about 40,000 resumes posted. So even if we matched every single applicant with the right job, we're still short about 50,000 workers in the state. And so that presents a serious challenge, and that's why, as Representative Vandermeer mentioned, we are trying to do everything in our power to not only retain our workforce right here, but to also attract. And that's why we've done things like the Youth Apprenticeship Program. That's why we continue to make targeted investments within education. And I'm looking forward to doing that over the course of the next several months as we work with the new administration on the budget. Now, I do think there are going to be some areas of agreement that we're going to be able to find compromise on with this new administration. Now, this is a whole new dynamic. This is about the first time in close to 40 years where we have one party that controls the executive branch and one party that controls the legislative branch. So I think a lot of us are still kind of trying to figure out how to navigate this new relationship. But I do think there are going to be some areas where we find agreement on things like broadband expansion, as Representative Vandermeer mentioned. Things like continuing to find partnerships between our environmental community and our ag community to make sure clean water is a huge priority. That's why this session I'm proud to be on the Speaker's Task Force for Groundwater Quality to try and address some of these issues and make sure that we're providing remediation for homeowners who can't go to their tap right now and get clean water, but also making sure that our ag industry can continue to thrive. There are going to be some areas, though, where I think we're going to be kind of far apart from the administration on. So as I mentioned this session, as chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, I'm kind of tasked with overseeing the healthcare policy for the state within the State Senate. And within Governor Evers' budget, he is looking to do Medicaid expansion. Now, one thing I'm thankful for is that he is targeting all this money towards the healthcare sector. Because one of the concerns I had early on, and when I sat down with both the governor and the Secretary of DHS designee Secretary Paulsen, was that this money wouldn't be necessarily allocated towards healthcare. Because over the last several years, we have heard some folks down in Madison say that Medicaid expansion can be used for transportation, can be used for education, can be used for anything under the sun. That it was kind of like this magic bullet, the catch-all to solving some of the problems that we're facing right now. Now, the issue that I have with what the governor's proposed, so he wants to take the $320 million Medicaid expansion from the federal government and allow people to get on Badger Care up to the 130% federal poverty line. Now, the problem with that is that it's going to shift about 44,000 people who are on private insurance right now onto Badger Care, which I believe is going to put an increased strain on our healthcare system, given the fact that our reimbursement rates within healthcare are some of the lowest in the country. Now, we've heard a lot of discussion on this topic over the course of the last several years, and since the budget was introduced, from people saying, heck yes, this is a great idea, to heck no. I'm trying to keep an open mind on this proposal, but for me personally, if we're going to entertain a discussion of Medicaid expansion, we should try and find market-based solutions as opposed to just throwing everyone onto Badger Care. So we've been looking at states like Arkansas. So back in 2014, the state of Arkansas, they expanded Medicaid through the 1115 Medicaid waivers through DHS. But what they kind of did was kind of unique compared to some other states. They actually took the Medicaid expansion to put people on private insurance. And by doing so, one, you have people on the private marketplace instead of on state assistance, but more importantly, the reimbursement rates on the private marketplace are a lot better than what they are on Medicaid. So I think this is a proposal that could be seen as an alternative, or if there is no legislative appetite whatsoever to talk about Medicaid expansion, then we should at least see what we can do to help with the reimbursement rates. We know that we are probably going to end this year with about a $300 million surplus within our Medicaid budget. Now, granted, that's not just $300 million that we can just dole out to everyone, because there are some commitments that have already been prearranged for that surplus, but we should be trying to find avenues and ways to raise up that reimbursement rate through our healthcare sector, just because we do have some of the lowest reimbursement rates in the country. And because of that, it has prevented some access in underserved areas, particularly in dental care, in our rural hospitals and clinics, as Nancy mentioned. That's one of the reasons why in the last biennium, we put in place grants for our healthcare workforce in rural hospitals and clinics for advanced practice clinicians and allied health professionals. So this is going to be an ongoing discussion. I know I kind of caught the tail end of Scott's remarks, but this is just the first step in the process. And there's going to be a lot of discussions between both the legislature and the administration. The beauty is, at the end of the day, we have to pass a budget. So what that's going to mean is there's going to be significant compromise. The governor is going to have to get some wins, the legislature is going to have to get some wins, and we're going to have to be able to sit down at the table and discuss what our priorities are going to be. I think what the governor has proposed, there are some areas, like I said, that we can get behind, but the fact that we're going to increase spending by nearly 10% compared to our previous budget, which is a total of, was it $83.5 billion? I mean, that is a heavy lift. And I have a lot of concerns with some of the proposals that he's thrown in there by trying to try and fund some of these priorities on the backs of our farmers and manufacturers. Especially when I look around this room, I mean, I see a lot of ag, I see a lot of manufacturing. And when you take a look at all the progress and growth that we've seen in central Wisconsin in just the past couple of years, as Scott mentioned, $80 million investment from Metalco, a $250 million investment in ND Paper, the $40 million investment at Verso Paper. We've got the $28 million development of the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club in downtown, and today we're going to have a pretty big announcement down at Encourage between a new partnership between Encourage, UWSP, and Midstate that I think is going to serve as a regional model for entrepreneurship, for economic development, job creation, that I'm really excited about. So I don't think now is the time to raise taxes. I think we can't allow our state to backslide on the progress that we have made, especially in places like central Wisconsin, where we've seen since the Great Recession, our recovery has lapsed compared to some other areas of the state, like the Fox Valley, Milwaukee, Madison. So I don't think we can afford to slow down. If anything, we should be continuing to find ways to make our job creation environment even stronger. So I'm going to remain as optimistic as humanly possible, because I do think we have a lot more work that needs to be done yet, and I'm looking forward to this session and working with each and every one of you to ensure that we continue to move central Wisconsin in the right direction. So with that, I'll wrap it up and we can take some questions.
Thank you very much, Senator. There for a minute, I thought you were going to make me feel really good by saying I yield my time to the speaker. I just thought that was, of course, that'll never happen. By the way, you might have looked over there. I know some of you that have gotten here a little late because of the weather. You're not going to hurt anyone's feelings, but please continue to eat, grab coffee, grab juice. You're not going to offend anyone at all. Just do that as you can this morning. We like to welcome several elected officials and give them a chance to introduce themselves to you. So we're going to start in the town of Rome with John Haugen. John is the town of Rome supervisor. So, good morning, John.
Good morning.
If you want to come up here, that's just, we want to get you on camera. So. Because they're going to want autographs and things afterwards.
If I'd have known I'd wear a suit.
No, you look just fine.
I wore green for St. Patrick's Day.
Good morning. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, my name is John Haugen. I'm a supervisor in the town of Rome. Town of Rome has many connections with you. One of them is right behind me here, the Wisconsin River. And we are very concerned about water quality. We also have 3 lakes down there. That's one of our main concerns is the water quality. We're a tourist community, we're also a retirement community. And by those 2 things, we have really focused our interest in improving the town as a whole. On Highway 13, that's also a connection that we all have. We have a corridor there where we have most of our businesses, not all of them, but a lot of the businesses are there. And if you've been through there, you'll know one of the biggest businesses there is Pritzels. You probably stopped at the corner there and filled up with gas or gone in. We also have a business park. And our business park, Alpine Business Park, we're trying to develop. We have a number of people that are coming in there with different ideas. This past summer, if you've been down there, maybe some of you have enjoyed that, but we have a brand new golf course, a mini golf course called Papa Bears. We also got a grant and put in a splash pad for kids. So even though our community average age is probably 65 because we're a retirement community, we have the Tri-Lakes there where people love to come and retire. They have grandkids and kids, and the grandkids have enjoyed the splash pad, and so it's just a great community. I look here at our representatives and Pat and Congressman or Representative Krug and Representative Glenmeyer. I think we have them in common as well. So hopefully we can tap into them for some of our needs as well. And we really need workforce housing with Sand Valley that you've all heard about. I think they hired about 400 people down there, and there's no place for people to stay, so we need workforce housing. We need help with that. As a retirement community, we're very concerned about taxes, and we have been successful in the past 2 years with the leadership of our chairman, Dr. Johnson, that we've been able to not raise taxes and still bring in an ambulance this year, so we have an ambulance at home. I hope I'm not stepping on any of your speech, but we're very proud to be here, and we're a proud community, and I'm glad we have those connections together. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Scott, I'm sorry I started all that.
I know.
I'm going to see Congressman Ron Kindon.
I was going to say, don't tell him yet.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, so that's a rumor that is unfounded. Call him a legislator. There you go.
All right, everybody, get back on track here.
Yeah, we're gonna stay in the town of Rome, and the town of Rome chairman. I'd like to welcome Wayne Johnson this morning. Good morning, Wayne.
In a former life, I served 28 years as a public school superintendent, and public school superintendents have a problem that they talk too much, so I will try to limit as close to 3 minutes as possible. Rome, actually the demographics, I think the average age is 62. Some people think it's much higher than that. I took notes on this envelope, which is my AARP communication, so I kind of resemble the average person in the town of Rome. We're a vibrant community. Most people don't realize we're bigger than Adams Friendship, we're bigger than Nakusa, we're bigger than Port Edwards. The only place bigger is Wisconsin Rapids. We have well over 3,000 people all the time. In the summer, our local population can go over 15,000 during the summer recreation period.
Yeah, it's not fun buying bread at Pritzels at that time
Yes.
of the year.
Don't try to get gassed on the 4th of July at Pritzels. We're like a small city. We have a public works department. We have a police department with 20 full and part-time officers. We have a police chief. We now have a sergeant detective. We have another sergeant. We have boat patrol during the summer. We're a very vibrant, and we're much more than people know what we are. And we're growing, we're doing well. Our housing starts are at an all-time high. It's amazing what's going on down in Rome. And you don't see that generally in Wisconsin Rapids. Mr. Krug can talk more about that because once in a while he'll get involved in selling a house.
Hey, if anybody's looking.
Yeah, that's a commercial. You can pay me later. A couple comments and then a compliment. I am so sick of politics. I turn on the news, I read a stupid tweet here, a stupid tweet there, and this person's bashing this person's lying. Unfortunately, that's kind of permeating our society, and we try very, very hard in Rome to be civil, be above board, be transparent, and work together. We don't always agree, but we do work together for the common good. And I challenge all of our politicians to not follow what's going on in Washington, D.C. and do what's right in Wisconsin. And I have to compliment these three people highly, their ability to reach across the aisle, to work with people, to listen, and just work for our benefit and what's good for people in Wisconsin. So thank you so much for having that attitude and operating that way. It is making a difference. And maybe we can set the example for the rest of the country, Congressman.
Hey, I'm going to have to make an announcement pretty soon.
I'm sorry, Scott. I want to talk about some good stuff, and then I want to talk about some challenges. The very best thing that we've done in the last 2 years was not freeze taxes. That's the second best thing. The very best thing was hiring Jamie Gebbert over there as our town administrator. We do have a full-time administrator. We kind of stole her from Portage County, so we're a much better place.
We rescued her, that's right.
Yeah, sorry, Senator Testin. We have done a number of things to try to improve what's already good. We've engaged the county board. We've been in no man's land, so to speak, in the middle between Adams Friendship and Wisconsin Rapids, and have been ignored. And we're engaging those people at the county board level to get them to recognize that we are the largest municipality in Adams County, in the town of Rome. And they're starting to recognize us and work with us. We generate 25% of the revenue for the entire county for less than 200 square miles. So we are the economic driver for Adams County, to a degree, the economic driver for Wisconsin Rapids. If you look at Sand Valley, our average homeowner is committed over $50,000 in TIF bonding to support Sand Valley. Not Wisconsin Rapids, not Nakusa, not Port Edwards. Our local property owners committed to that development. You're all benefiting from it. But our bucks are what caused it, not yours. So, but we're very happy to share it with you and share the credit. We're getting a full-time 24/7 ambulance. If our average age is 62 or higher, doesn't it make sense that we should have an ambulance with, in the winter, over 3,000 people? And we're building an ambulance building and a police department to be able to accommodate that. We've contracted for that ambulance, and we're very, very proud and happy about that. Again, property taxes have been frozen for 2 years. Every other taxing body went up. One taxing body as high as 10.8%. That affected the people in the town of Rome. The county went up 2.8%. We went up 0%. And we're going to fight to keep those property taxes at that level if at all possible. We're very proud of that. Development, Sand Valley, they actually have over 500 employees when the season's going, maybe 100 employees in the off-season. They're trying to develop a Four Seasons resort. I really see that happening. An example, they just had a fat tire bike race out there in the snow. I understand they had over 200 entrants, and they brought in several hundred people for that event. So lots of good things are happening, a lot of four-season besides snowmobiling. Although I understood a few days we had to close the snowmobile trails because there was too much snow, which is kind of unique. Tourism's going through the roof. We have a tourism bureau. All the public services that Wisconsin Rapids or any bigger city has, we have in the town of Rome. Some of our challenges, we're trying to develop our Parks and Recreation Department. We now have a full committee to do that. The Legacy Foundation, with that $500,000 that 3 of our communities got for the splash pad, is kind of anchoring our new Park and Recs Department and expansion there. The problem is, how do we fund that without raising taxes? And we're committed not to raise taxes if at all possible. Water quality, and I want to challenge our legislators here for a second. I know 2 of you for sure, I'm not sure about the one in the middle, supporting cleaning up our water and water quality. Agriculture depends on quality water, tourism depends on quality water, and our citizens depend on quality water. Governor Evers has requested $70 million to help clean up the water. I'm sorry, that isn't near enough. I hope that doesn't get cut. In some way, that needs to be $170 million. That's part of the economic engine that drives our state. If this water out the window here gets any dirtier, we're going to go the other way instead of up in development. So that is just critical to our state for agriculture, tourism, and each of us when we turn on that faucet at home to get a drink of water. Housing is also another issue. We have an issue where a big shortage of senior housing, and we're working hard to try to develop that. And you talk about a shortage of employees, we can find some employees, but we have nowhere to put them. So workforce housing is another critical issue in our community. Last thing, our town administrator has a number of brochures telling us that we are wonderful, that we'd like to share with you before you leave. If you haven't been down to Sand Valley, come visit. If you haven't been to our splash pad or business park or Pritzels or one of our lakes, we welcome you into the town of Rome. So it's great to be here. We'll see if I get reelected on April 2nd. And we'll move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to move up the road a little bit from the town of Rome and invite Sue Mitchell, Village of Port Edwards. I'd like to say a few words. And we're now inundated with Rome, Adams County, and Mammoth Dunes on here, so that's something to look at while you're
Port
speaking.
Edwards.
Yeah, you need a Port Edwards brochure.
I'm on the Village of Port Edwards Board of Trustees, and I am running again. And thank you for all that information from both Rapids and the town of Rome. We are obviously a neighbor of the Rapids area, so we're depending on the whole economics of this greater area. And for all the people who live in Port Edwards who work either in the town of Rome or in Wisconsin Rapids. And yes, we have a splash pad that is being built also. And our board has been working very hard, and we have a group of very well trained and longevity employees. But one of the things that we probably need, and I would support, and I will look at all 3 of you, is the 2%, the proposal for the 2% increase in shared revenue. We could really use that for the infrastructure that we need. I'm sorry, my voice is going too. We have a lot of water, and I'm not talking surface water, I'm talking plumbing in the village, and streets that need to be repaired, and I'm sure all of you sitting here can say that where you live too. So we need extra support. And because, excuse me, I'm sorry, my voice is really disappearing. Because we are a slow growth community, because as you know, the mill closed down, all of you are aware of that. We would like to have some more support from the state too. So I invite all of you to vote on April 2nd for all of the representatives that you have to your various boards. So I will let it stand at that.
Well, we're going to head out to Grand Rapids where I don't think there's any water anywhere, right? The chair of Grand Rapids Board, Arne Nystrom. And when was your last call last night about water? Midnight?
It was 10:30.
10:30, okay. Welcome.
Thank you and welcome, folks. And as you know, I've been in Grand Rapids for a long time, been elected since 1995. Last 5 years as the chairman. I waited to run for chairman because we had a very excellent chairman, and besides I was working full-time, and that was my priorities other than serving the town. But Grand Rapids is a great community, 13th largest in the state of Wisconsin, 3rd largest community in Wood County. Just shy of 8,000 people. I am proud that when I started in 1995, the tax rate was $3 a thousand. Right now, it is $3.05 per thousand, or 5.6. Now, that's not saying we didn't raise more money. The valuations of Grand Rapids have gone up because of the tremendous increase in housing that we've had this last year. 32 additional homes were built in Grand Rapids. So far, we have 2 or 3 permits started already and many inquiries. What we're looking for now is we almost need more subdivision land. So I know the contractors and the builders are looking at the area. I certainly appreciate Scott Krug stopping in to see my fire department earlier this week. Talked to our chief and some of the staff about any assistance that they can give to the volunteers, such as maybe some tax credits or some stipends to help them out with additional schooling, stuff like that. We appreciate any effort that we can. We have a good fire department where it has a lot of people that are going to the tech college, to the school. They go on to be paramedics, and then they go to full-time jobs. And quite frankly, I want to thank the mayor for hiring some of them, because they're great people you're getting from us when they've had 5-6 years on our staff. Now, when I started in politics, we had a part-time police officer became full-time. We started increasing the staff. Currently, we are at full-time staff, which is 5 full-time officers plus an investigator. So we have our own investigator, which helps us process a lot of our issues we have. I'm very proud to say that with our police department's efforts, March 1st, SafeWise.com reported Grand Rapids as the #1 safest community in the state of Wisconsin. I take that as my board, because I have a good board and we do a great job. I'm up for re-election again, and I'd appreciate your votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Well, you hear Grand Rapids is a nice place, so we'll keep there. And introduce Dan Paulsen, Grand Rapids Supervisor.
All right. I'm going to make this quick.
Now be careful, the chairman's listening here. Be careful.
Dan Paulsen, Town of Grand Rapids Supervisor. I've been on the board for the last 5 years, worked with Arne. And I'd like to just say that the same thing that the chairman of Rome said. We have a very, I would say, diverse board. And if you look at any of our meetings or whatever, there's some pretty good exchanges. But at the end of the day, we have to make a decision, and we move forward. And at the end of the day, we can sit down afterwards and have a beer or whatever. And I think that's just good government. Town of Grand Rapids, like I said, is booming as far as a residential community. That I was going to wonder who was going to get here first. say who got the Safewise #1 safest town, but yeah, that is a big accomplishment. And it's not just our board, our police department, but it's our public service guys, it's our fire department, our staff. Those guys, you can't say enough if people stop in our town board. So I'm also up for election. Look at anybody in Grand Rapids. Even if you're not, stop by and vote. No.
Tried that in Wausau.
No, but thank you, and it's a great community, and look forward to serving it.
Thank you. What's the expression from our, and I have a lot of relatives in Illinois, and I actually love the state of Illinois, but what their motto is something about
Vote early, vote often.
vote often, and every citizen is allowed to vote. Isn't that how it works?
Thank God for voter.
And I want to make sure we didn't miss anyone that's on the ballot. Again, we had, due to the weather and things, we had some changes, but seeing none. I also would like to open it up for some questions. I know we have elected officials throughout the room, and this time you don't actually have to come up to the podium, but do we have any questions for any of our elected officials? Also, we also have kind of we have not just Wisconsin, because Gordon Crow is the president of Synergy right here, and he's a former elected official from the state of Idaho. But any questions from anybody? Well, go right ahead, John.
I'm John Benbow, and I'm on the Wisconsin Rapids School Board. And as far as school start date is very important this year. As far as one of the primary things for school districts would be give us control of the start dates. Don't handcuff us because 2 counties wanted, or 2 or 3 counties needed that. There's 69 other counties that don't care. And this year in particular, some of these school districts, I know Adams has closed most of this week, so they had on top of the 8 days already, probably 11 or 12. I think Stevens Point was closed an extra day. I know we've been closed 8 days, so we have to make up 4 of them. So being able to start a week earlier in August is a world of difference as far as going up to now. Some of these school districts will be until mid-June. So I mean, it's not a big thing, but it is a big thing to school districts. And if you guys could at all help us with that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I know it comes up every session. Each of the 5 sessions I've been there, there's been discussion on it.
This year is
And
just...
and I don't know if the discussion is going to change this year, John, but I can just be brutally honest with you, is that it's just not well received in the legislature right now for whatever reason, and we can try to help advocate that, but it seems like anybody that represents a district north of Wausau is an absolute no on that for some reason. So it's just been, and I get the reasons why. I mean, I know they're tourist-based economy, they try to use that as the biggest reason, but I don't see it changing this session. So I just want to be honest with you on it.
Well, that's one of the things, and it could be one of the things that we use for advocacy and staff school boards start setting resolutions on it. But it is important because it really handcuffs school districts on what we can do for time.
And you want it so each school district can make up their own. So it would be, for the northern ones, they could go weeks later,
They
right?
still do whatever they want. Let the school districts have control of it rather than have it decided by the
If might I add to that,
Yes, go ahead.
from the higher ed perspective, it would be helpful to us to have more flexibility in that too. Primarily because we're looking at how to offer a 4-year degree in 3 years. And so flexibility with the calendar is going to be critical in that instance.
Chancellor Bernie Patterson, UWSP, if you don't know Bernie. Gordon, and then Zach.
Quick statement about, all of you mentioned keeping our kids and our graduates here in the area and working on retention for the workforce here and dwindling resources. I need to point out, every place you've heard me address this, I've said it, I want to repeat it. If every kid had graduated from high school, college, or university around your state here and worked, we still have a labor shortage. Synergy went to Central Wisconsin Days last month and championed the extra funding to give economic aid to all students in the state that wanted to go to a technical college. But again, if we kept all of them here, which is unrealistic to think that we will, but if we did, we still have a labor shortage. I would propose that we shift our focus a little bit, give 100% effort to retention of people in Wisconsin, but also give some effort now to recruiting people in from out of the state. And the greatest resources we have for recruiting bodies and workers from outside the state are higher education, university and technical colleges. There were 23,000 students in the state who couldn't get technical college assistance last year. I think we need to take care of those, but I also think we need to work on making University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, Mid-State Tech, and North Central Tech magnet schools from outside the state and start looking at that. We need to be more than counterintuitive. We need to be fully intuitive on what we're working on here. And working on retention is more or less a Band-Aid. It's important to get the Band-Aid on there, but it doesn't solve the problem. The wound doesn't go away. We need to focus more on that. Our universities and tech schools are the prime attractors, magnets for that. So give that some thought.
I agree with you, Gordon. And I know that's why in discussions I've had with UW President Ray Cross, I know he's specifically trying to find ways to help out UW to get to do just that, to go out and help get that talent traction in places like Minnesota. And that, I will say that was one area where I was also a little bit disappointed in what the governor proposed within his budget. He gave more than what the UW system had asked, but at the same time gave half of what the tech colleges were looking for. Right. So when campuses like Mid-State, when there's a huge need for that, and some assistance could be greatly appreciated to get these students in the door and into programs that are in high demand right now. I think that's going to be an area where we as a legislature probably have to intervene and do what we can to make sure that we are supporting not just our campuses like UWSP, but making sure like campuses like Mid-State are able to provide the training that they're giving the people right now.
For what it's worth, on February 26th at 11 a.m., speaking to the Synergy Central Wisconsin Days group, Governor Evers committed $500 billion to the University of Wisconsin.
He likes committing fees.
I think he misspoke. He didn't catch himself, but he did commit to $500 billion to the University of Wisconsin.
The other thing that I wanted to piggyback on that a little bit is one of the things we did last session was we did our talent incentive grants to try to take our message of Wisconsin further out to the Midwest and across the country. That's one of the things that we're going to try to look for in the legislative budget coming forward is the reinstatement of that, because it's not in the governor's budget right now. That was a really successful program to get all of our efforts in recruiting for manufacturing and other industries out to other states and try to expand our reach a little bit, like Pure Michigan does.
Right.
So Wisconsin's really trying to do that. We need to get that reinstated in the budget. So.
And I was.
No, go right ahead. No, go right ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to mention something else. I talked about the physician's licensure compact. That's one of the areas that I'm especially interested in. We also have a nursing compact. I was the author of that. And when a nurse is licensed in Wisconsin, that nurse is also licensed in 26 other states. And so that helps along the border regions, but it also can be another easy way to recruit nurses into our state as well. And that's a high demand field. So, rightly so, we need to be looking at these high demand fields and how we attract them, because those are certainly drivers in our various organizations and businesses, but it's our economy as a whole. So I really appreciate your point. And the point on the technical schools, that's very important as well. I think we always need to recognize that there is a nimbleness in our technical schools, being able to create additional curriculum to respond very quickly to changes in manufacturing, et cetera. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Zach Roy,
Just a quick comment to John's point about local control, and then I've got a question. I think just as an overt reminder to our state legislators that the local communities in this room know our community's needs best, and the Madison knows best mindset doesn't get us very far, particularly because we're quite removed from Madison. But my question is around transportation financing. The governor's budget offered a 10% increase to towns in general transportation aids and 10% increase in connecting highway aids. I'd like a one-word answer from the three of you. It's the largest increase to municipalities. You all drove here to the fine roads in Wisconsin Rapids and see the challenges that we're faced, as well as the challenges that all of the municipalities in the region and the state are facing. I just wanted an answer. Would you support the 10% increase in the governor's budget for transportation aids?
Yes. That's the best one word answer. That was tough to just say one.
Of course, I would support transportation increases. And I mentioned that in my comments earlier, why I rejected the very first budget that I was asked to vote on. But I want to, if I can, add more than one word. I'd certainly like to do that. I think we need to look at other opportunities that we have as far as efficiencies. The DOT audit that was done in 2016. There can be, I think, some efficiencies there, maybe giving us some opportunities for that financing and trying to get there.
Hopefully.
As an option, Pat.
You just said one word. You didn't
Yeah, I wasn't specified, Mayor. No, I'm with Representative Krug on this, and I've said on the record in the past, if we can get more local road aids, I mean, that's going to go a long way to helping out our local communities. And I apologize, I have to get rolling. I've got 5 town halls today, so I'll be around the district, and then I will see everyone hopefully at the Encourage announcement at 10 o'clock.
We're going to talk about that in a second.
The last thing, I know we're all going to be yes on that. It's just a matter of how we fund that. And like my comments going back to how we're going to fund our state budget with $2.4 billion in additional revenue, we can use that revenue for transportation. We don't have to increase taxes. So if we talk about 8 cents per gallon of gas tax, I don't think it's going to happen. Just putting it out there.
Any other, yes?
I'm Bobby Gammer from Mid-State. Legislators, thank you for keeping us in the proposed budget. Yes, it's less than what we need, but just having a presence there is very important to us. And I wanted to share with the folks in this room what that means and where we're at. We've got 170 people on our nursing wait list. We are working profusely to get them in the program, to keep them here. We know they'll stay. We're working with our healthcare providers for more clinical sites, for more equipment and things like that. We can't lose them. And so we talk about capacity building. That's something very near and dear to us when we think about the shortage of nurses, right? The other thing that we're working on right now is we have a lot of demand for apprenticeships. That's great. That's what we built, this area on. We have 10 programs. We've got 3 more that we're working on. So as we capacity build, we're bringing in a machine tool apprenticeship program. We are bringing in a E&I. Really excited about that. And of course, we're looking at, we've just been requested for an IBEW, another section of the electrical contractors. So that's what we're doing here locally. So keeping us in the budget, getting any more for us, just know that it's going to go very local, and we've got the demand to really make something happen here to keep the workforce and actually increase it. So thank you for all the support thus far.
Thank you. Just, we have time for maybe a question or two. Anyone else? Yes.
Greg Brewer, Superintendent, Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your commentary. However, I think you probably gave my board member an opportunity to limit my conversation to one-word answers as well, which, as we heard, school superintendents like to talk, and I don't know why that would be, but the 2 things that I would echo are, A, this local control piece, and Scott and I know Pat have met with me several times, this idea around school start dates and what they want to do in the Northern Tier. These are things that are very clearly local decision-making, as would be an opportunity to go to referendum or whatever the case may be. And I don't quite understand how we can talk local control on one issue but not on others. So I would echo support and sentiment around legitimate local control on issues that are largely inconsequential, or we can decide how consequential they are in our own municipality or organization. The second thing I would say is, as you probably guessed, would divert your attention to not only the governor's budget being proposed, which it's not stunning to me that that's not going to be adopted as written. That's never happened, I don't believe, in the history of the state. But I would point to, once again, the Blue Ribbon Commission's recommendations around modifications to public education funding. And although that's a bipartisan committee, which I would argue had more Republican representation than Democratic, but so that, it doesn't necessarily dictate one way or the other, that we work incrementally in some capacity to achieve the goals, because many of the goals of the Blue Ribbon Commission are in the governor's budget proposal. So I would encourage all of our legislators and our local ones, of course, to anticipate that and do the best they can to incorporate as many aspects of the Blue Ribbon Commission's recommendation into the finally adopted budget, if in fact we get one.
Yeah, that's the plan, is on our side, trying to make sure the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations are fully implemented in our budget, whether we work off the governor's budget or our own, that's our number 1 goal in education, make sure that those recommendations are fully implemented, because
there's no commission or there's no task force or anything that we've done in the state in the last 20 years that did as much work as the Blue Ribbon Commission did in trying to figure out transportation or education flexibilities. I think it's going to be bigger than dollar per dollar, I think, is the flexibility. So we're trying, John, to get that part of it done, but I think especially in the commission side, we're going to get those fully implemented. So,
Thank you.
Okay, any final question or comment from the group? Hearing none, Kelly Ryan, would you like to make kind of a neat announcement involving several in this room? So.
Thanks, Craig. Well, I don't want to steal any thunder from 10 a.m., but I just want to reiterate Senator Testin's invite. And many of you in the room were invited to a press event at 10 a.m. this morning at the Tribune. However, if you didn't receive an invitation, I want to tell you that you are all welcome to come. 10 a.m. at the Tribune on the beautiful Wisconsin River. And we're very excited about the announcement. We'll also be hosting Secretary Joel Brennan from the Department of Administration will be there to speak on behalf of Governor Evers. And it's a really tremendous partnership announcement, and it is very futuristic, and I think it's going to be essential to the future of this economy and this community. And many of you were involved in making that happen. So if you come, bring your coat, because we only keep that building heated warm enough to have the pipes not freeze. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Ocean Spray, thank you very much. Enbridge, thank you very much. Urkel Worldwide, thank you very much. Domtar, thank you very much. And also like to thank Jesse Austin, Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. That will be available on the Charter and Solaris at some point in the future.
I will have Jesse get it to me and we will email it out.
Oh, we'll email it all out to, any closing comments, Krista?
We just thank all the sponsors. Angel is our new president, so if you haven't met her yet, she is over there. You can meet her afterwards. And we just want to thank you all for attending. We're looking forward to growing our communities and working together, and I think there's a lot of great things going on in our area, and we're just excited for the future.
And again, I want to thank all of you for attending, and I also want to especially thank all of you in this room that are either hold an office, run for an office, have run for an office, will run for an office, because those of you in that world know that's a thankless job at times, and it's a lot of work, and you're kind of just, when the phone rings, you're off to help out with something else, but we want to thank you all for that, and also really thank our folks here from United Way is here, UW-Stevens Point, Mid-State Tech, all of our educational folks, Wisconsin Rapids Schools, and others. So have a great rest of the day and be safe if you're traveling, and thanks again.
Cool, great.